Welcome back. Today, Mitt Romney was selling his vision for the economy in Sterling, Virginia, a town that was once home to a factory and a company partially owned by Bain Capital. The company, called DDI Corp., filed bankruptcy in 2003 after firing 460 workers at the factory. It's stories like that are giving the Obama campaign a major opening in this election. Tough ads are now running in swing states like Virginia and Ohio. Watch.
Day one, President Romney stands up to China.
But would he? The Washington Post has just revealed that Romney's companies were pioneers in shipping U.S. jobs overseas.
Last week alone, the Obama campaign spent more than $1.5 million in ads in Ohio alone, and it's paying off. A new Quinnipiac poll shows President Obama leading Romney in Ohio 47 to 38%. And an NBC poll shows him leading Romney by 8 points in the nation's battleground states. Joining me now is Anna Marie Cox, a Washington correspondent for The Guardian, and retired U.S. Army Captain Wes Moore. He's best-selling author of the book, The Other Wes Moore. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Wes, let's start with you. Are the Bain attacks working in the Rust Belt swing states like Ohio?
The Bain attacks are definitely working, but more importantly than the Bain attacks, one thing that people are understanding is this is not about an attack on Mitt Romney's business record per se. This is an attack on the fact that he is claiming that his businesses that he ran somehow created jobs. And all that's happening right now is people are understanding there's a difference between being an investor and actually creating jobs and actually creating businesses that actually accelerate job growth. That's where Mitt Romney is finding there's an extraordinary disconnect between his rhetoric and actually what happened in terms of the record that he actually puts forward.
Now, let me ask you, Anna Marie, the vice president was in Iowa today, and he was mocking Romney's campaign, his campaign's outsourcing and offshoring argument that they've been using. Let me show you what he said.
If you're looking for work, that's a pretty cruel joke. I can picture one guy in my old neighborhood standing next to another guy in the unemployment line and saying, "Hey, John, did you get offshored or outsourced? Which happened to you?"
Anna Marie, how do you respond to this kind of attack by the vice president?
Well, it's very clever. And, of course, for the people standing online for a job, it really doesn't matter if you were offshored or off-sourced. And also, it really doesn't matter to them whether or not Mitt Romney was a successful businessman. I mean, I think everyone can agree that he was. It's just, do the skills that make you a successful businessman make you a successful president? Or do the skills that make you a successful businessman make you someone who is able to create jobs for more Americans? I mean, clearly, he created more jobs. He just didn't necessarily create them here. So, I mean, I think that's the thing that voters are having to look at. And I think it's really smart to sort of let the vice president make this argument and to let voters see for themselves what's happening here. It's impossible to villainize someone who's just doing the best he can, which is what Romney was doing. But you can say, look at what he did. The best he could do was to give jobs away overseas.
Now,
I mean, and I would say, I think, the challenge, though, is that the idea of the best he can do, people understand that, in order to grow, in order to have growth and actually revenue inside the company, that if adjustments have to be made, that's one thing. The difference is when you start making the baseline of your campaign that you're a job creator. Yeah. So the problem isn't even necessarily the record. The problem really is the rhetoric that he's putting behind the record.
And he projected this. He's the one that said, "I'm a job creator. Look at my record at Bain." No one brought it in.
The president did not introduce that. Right. Mitt Romney introduced that.
Now, the fact is that as he has continued to begin to be examined and these areas are raised by the president and vice president, it seemed to have been taking impact. His favorables are down 6 points from May. He's down to 30% favorable. And he's up 5 points in his unfavorables to 41%. That's a problem, Wes.
Well, I think what's happening is, the president's strategy and the strategy of the president's team was try to define Mitt Romney before he has a chance to define himself. And so by talking about things like his business record, by talking about things like what he would have done to Detroit had he had been the commander-in-chief, by being able to bring these things to the American people, that's the way you're able to help bring these negatives up before Mitt Romney even has a chance to defend himself. And so I think the strategy that they're putting in place, we're seeing by these poll numbers, are working pretty effectively.
All right, I want to turn to another big issue in some battleground states, immigration. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court struck down most of Arizona's anti-immigration law, a big setback for conservatives pushing a states' rights agenda. Anna Marie, you wrote a column saying, quote, Arizona's law wasn't about filling in where federal government wasn't. The Arizona law attempted to go beyond the authority of the federal government. Now, how will this ruling affect the political debate in 2012 and, for that matter, beyond?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at the polling on this issue, Americans they aren't just sharply divided, but what you see is people who strongly agree being like the first category, and then very, very short after that in polling that being strongly disagree. And then when you start to get into details of the law, it turns out people really are compassionate about immigration. People understand how difficult it is to get into the country. It's turning that into law and turning that into things that people can sort of understand that's difficult. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that the changes that the president has made, and even the changes in the Arizona law, aren't going to affect the mass number of people that are trying to get in the U.S. Something like 8 million people a year try to get into the U.S. There's 11 million illegals in the U.S. The debate that we're having about police stopping people in cars, about whether or not young people can stay in the country, is kind of just rhetoric. It's just politics. Although it is very helpful to find someone as a candidate like Mitt Romney who can't even really speak to the human aspects of it, much less lay out his actual policy on it.
I'm going to have to hold it there. Anna Marie Cox and Wes Moore, thank you both for your time tonight.
Thanks.
Ahead, the corporate-backed Republican effort to block the vote is in full swing all over the country. But today, the fight is on. That's next.